Chapter 121. Early the next morning, Song-won arrived at the corpse dissection cave early in the day. When he left before, he had taken a 1-month leave from the steward Fongdeng. Even though he returned 2 days early, he still needed to report to Fongdeng. Seeing Song-won, who had disappeared for nearly a month, said nothing more. He understood the importance of keeping a low profile better than Yuan Chung. Aside from arranging the corpse dissection matters, he rarely spoke to the corpse dissection personnel. Ji-in, since you took a 1-month leave, according to the rules, you need to make up for the number of corpses you missed during this month over the next 3 months. Recently, you'll be assigned 200 corpses per day. Do you have any objections? Fongdeng acted according to the rules, and Song-won had no objections. All decisions are up to Steward Fong. I have no objections. Fongdeng nodded, handed Song-won 4 storage bags, and then closed his eyes, saying no more. Song-won went to dissection station No. 73 and began to dissect the corpses at a slow and steady pace. After nearly 6 hours of dissection, Song-won had gone from initial disgust and resistance to eventual adaptation and numbness. Now, Song-won had even started to enjoy the dissection process. It was similar to how Taoists recite scriptures daily to cultivate their hearts and natures, or how monks strike the wooden fish and recite Buddhist scriptures to purify their thoughts and eliminate karma. During corpse dissection, Song-won could achieve a similar effect. His mind was as calm as still water, serene and peaceful. Dissecting corpses helped Song-won clear his mind, cultivate himself, and enhance his state of mind. TL note. WTF. Song-won no longer merely pursued speed in dissection but aimed for a state of mastery akin to carving meat like a skilled butcher. With each corpse he dissected, he sought the completeness of the tendons, bones, blood vessels, and muscles. To him, the dissected limbs and organs were like artworks to an artist or verses to a poet. They were the artistic creations of his hard work. It took Song-won over 4 hours to dissect 200 corpses. When he exited the dissection cave, it was already approaching evening. After leaving the dissection cave, he did not head to his cave residence but instead went to the transmission hall on the mountain. The corpse king blood refining art he cultivated was only a chi refining period technique. If he wanted to continue advancing his cultivation, he either needed to find the subsequent techniques for the corpse king blood refining art or switch to other foundation establishment techniques. Moreover, now that he had reached the foundation establishment stage, he also needed to improve his techniques and skills and learn some techniques suitable for foundation establishment cultivators. The corpse demon sex transmission hall consisted of 3 ancient buildings, each corresponding to the techniques and secrets for chi refining, foundation establishment, and gold core cultivators. Without a foundation establishment elder token, Song-won could not enter the foundation establishment transmission building. He stood several hundred meters away from the foundation establishment transmission building. In front of the building sat a middle-aged woman with an enduring charm. She had her eyes closed, sitting cross-legged as if in meditation. This woman was the elder in charge of the foundation establishment transmission building. Unlike the bustling chi refining transmission building, the foundation establishment transmission building was deserted, rarely visited. The corpse demon sect had publicly announced that there were over 200 foundation establishment cultivators. Most of them would come to the transmission hall once after their foundation establishment, and rarely visit afterward. In Song-won's perception, the middle-aged woman had at least mid-foundation establishment cultivation. It was clearly impossible to sneak past her into the transmission building. Furthermore, he was unsure if there were other hidden guards in the transmission building. Sneaking in recklessly would be akin to seeking death. Holding the elder token and entering the transmission hall openly was the best strategy. The disciples of the corpse demon sect and the elders both used their respective tokens to match the aura of the token with the cultivator's own aura to verify identity. Song-won's physical control over his aura allows him to mimic someone else's aura. This means that as long as he has an elder's token, he can smoothly enter the transmission hall. Of course, the elder he mimics must not be someone too familiar to the staff, or even the best imitation would reveal flaws in his behavior and mannerisms. Standing outside the foundation establishment transmission building for a while, Song-won pretended to sigh lightly and then turned to walk towards the chi refining transmission building. He acted like a low-level disciple longing for foundation establishment, imagining the day he would step into the foundation establishment transmission building after reaching that stage, as a chi refining stage cultivator. Song-won had lingered outside the foundation establishment transmission building for a long time. If he didn't make some deceptive moves, It would inevitably arouse suspicion. At the Qi refining transmission building, he casually picked a secret technique and then descended the mountain towards the market. Entering the market, Song Wen headed straight for the underground black market. In the black market, he could try to obtain some information about the corpse demon sects. Foundation establishment cultivators. As soon as he entered the underground black market, Song Wen noticed something unusual. There were noticeably more Foundation establishment cultivators among the crowds in the black market than usual, and most of these were scattered cultivators. Where did so many Foundation establishment scattered cultivators come from? I haven't heard of any major auctions in the market recently, and there are no rumors of secret realms or relics around the corpse demon sect. What are these scattered cultivators gathering here for? Song Wen sensed an unusual atmosphere among these Foundation establishment scattered cultivators, but after some thought, he felt it was irrelevant to him anyway. He was focused on hiding in his cave for cultivation, dissecting corpses, and extracting a bit of essence blood to exchange for cultivation resources. He was quite satisfied with the current situation. It would be even better if he could eliminate the threat posed by Shou, unless one day, the essence blood obtained from dissecting corpses could no longer meet his cultivation needs. He might consider leaving Song Wen walked straight to the central counter of the underground black market hall and addressed an old man behind the counter. I want information on the corpse demon sect's recent Foundation establishment cultivators. How many spirit stones will it cost? The old man lifted his murky eyes, staring at Song Wen, and spoke in a hoarse, gravelly voice. Recently, many people have been buying information about corpse demon sect's Foundation establishment cultivators. I didn't expect a Qi refining 7th layer kid like you to join in the fun. Song Wen's appearance was that of a Qi refining 7th layer young scattered cultivator. In the past few years, there have been 7 people who achieved Foundation establishment in the corpse demon sect. To get information on these 7, it will cost 2,000 spirit stones. Song Wen's expression changed slightly. So expensive? The old man smiled sarcastically. With so many people buying Foundation establishment cultivator information recently, prices have naturally gone up. Some things are not meant for a Qi refining little cultivator like you. The old man's words seemed to hint at something more. Song Wen didn't think much of it. Believing these matters were not significant to him and chose not to dwell on them, he took out 2,000 spirit stones from his storage bag and handed them to the old man. The old man looked at Song Wen with an odd expression, seemingly surprised that a Qi refining 7th layer cultivator would casually produce 2,000 spirit stones. The old man tossed a jade slip to Song Wen and then lowered his head. Saying nothing more, Song Wen took the jade slip and turned to leave the black market. He had a vague sense that something was off about the atmosphere in the black market and decided it would be better to avoid this place in the future. End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC. Currently up to 191 as of 25 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon, Pa-Cinder-TL. If you are content with the free chapters, you can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as 1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon, and please leave some reviews. Need more reviews. Chapter 122. Upon returning to his cave residence, Song Wen began examining the contents of the jade slip. In the past 5 years, the corpse demon sect had produced a total of 7 Foundation establishment cultivators, among whom 4 were direct disciples. Song Wen ruled out these 4 immediately. Direct disciples, once they advance to the Foundation establishment stage, automatically become devil sons or devil daughters who are key targets for the sect's cultivation. They are likely to have the opportunity to advance to the golden core stage, making them high-risk targets. Among the remaining 3, there were 2 women and 1 man, all of whom achieved Foundation establishment as inner sect disciples. Of these 3, the man's experience in Foundation establishment was the most unusual. This man was named Chun Feihe. The jade slip contained his likeness, a very handsome man with a somewhat feminine appearance in his attire and demeanor. Chun Feihe was actually the favored concubine of a golden core ancestor of the corpse demon sect. Thanks to the ancestor's favor, he received a continuous supply of resources and precious Foundation establishment pills, allowing him to achieve Foundation establishment at the age of 27. Relying on his relationship with the Golden Core ancestor for his Foundation establishment was not unusual in the cultivation world, but the key point was, the Golden Core ancestor named Banyu was a robust man with a full beard. The other 2 female cultivators had more straightforward experiences. They relied on their own hard work to break through to the peak of Qi refining. repeatedly teetering on the edge of life and death, making great contributions to the sect, and were rewarded with foundation establishment pills to achieve foundation establishment. These two female cultivators had fought their way up from the very bottom, displaying exceptional skills and resilience. In contrast, Chen Feihe was just a soft target. However, with a golden core ancestor as his backing, he was not someone to be underestimated. After careful consideration, Songwen decided to focus on Chen Feihe. The two female cultivators were either deeply immersed in their own cultivation or performing sect tasks, making it difficult to contact them. Chen Feihe, on the other hand, was relatively easy to approach, because his cultivation was entirely dependent on the pills given by the Golden Core ancestor and he didn't need to perform sect tasks. He had plenty of time to wander around every day to maintain the Golden Core ancestor's favor. Chen Feihe often strolled through the market, buying cosmetics, clothing, and other things to ensure he remained fresh in the ancestor's eyes. Occasionally, he would also visit the brothels in the market to learn some flirtatious gestures from the women there, hoping to please the Golden Core ancestor. 5 days later, in the evening, a graceful figure strolled through the market wearing a green robe and holding a folding fan, moving lightly and elegantly, surrounded by a fragrant aura exhaling like orchids. With a seductive charm and graceful demeanor, he outshone many women in the market. Songwen looked at the enchanting Chen Feihe and couldn't help but marvel. It was clear that someone who could captivate a Golden Core ancestor had his exceptional qualities. Despite being a man, Chen Feihe carried a feminine allure, causing many people in the market to look at him with sideways glances. Chen Feihe, indifferent to these looks of disdain, disgust, or contempt, walked with composure, swaying his waist as he browsed one woman's clothing and cosmetic shop after another regardless of how others viewed him. He had truly become a foundation establishment cultivator whom many lower-level cultivators looked up to. He could fly with his sword, soaring freely between heaven and earth, feeling the freedom of the wind. With a lifespan of over 250 years, those who scorned him would eventually turn to dust, while he would still be enjoying the scenery. He smiled lightly at others' slanders and ridicule. The path of cultivation is vast and varied. Regardless of the methods used, as long as one can survive in the cultivation world and gain a longer lifespan, it is the correct path. Chen Feihe wore a proud expression, watching the passers-by who clearly looked down on him but dared not show it, instead putting on a respectful front. This made him feel very pleased. As he exited a cosmetics shop, he encountered a foundation establishment cultivator approaching him. The newcomer cupped his hands in greeting, his expression carrying a hint of respect, and spoke, "Zhang Chang greets Elder Chan of the Corpse Demon Sect." Chen Feihe looked at the man before him. This middle-aged male cultivator had only recently entered the foundation establishment stage and was a newcomer among foundation establishment cultivators. He was certainly much stronger than Chen Feihe, who had achieved foundation establishment solely through the aid of pills and had never experienced real danger. Chen Feihe felt no particular wariness toward this self-recommending middle-aged cultivator. After all, in the territory of the Corpse Demon Sect, who didn't know that Chen Feihe was close to a Golden Core ancestor? He had been with the sect for over 10 years, and since aligning himself with the Golden Core ancestor, no one had dared to provoke him. On the contrary, Chen Feihe felt a faint sense of familiarity with the man claiming to be Zhang Chang. This was because Zhang Chang also wore light makeup and carried a touch of a feminine aura. "Who are you, and why are you blocking my way?" Chen Feihe asked with a calm expression. Songwen said, "I'm a newly arrived rogue cultivator here. I've heard that Elder Chan has a fondness for cosmetics, and since I share this interest, I hope to make your acquaintance." Chen Feihe was intrigued. It was the first time he had met someone with a similar interest. He raised his eyebrows, examining Songwen with a seductive gaze. "Oh? You also have an interest in cosmetics?" Songwen felt somewhat uncomfortable under Chen Feihe's alluring gaze and quickly responded, "This place is too crowded and noisy for conversation. Elder Chan, would you be willing to discuss this further at the Spring Breeze Pavilion ahead?" The Spring Breeze Pavilion was the largest brothel in the market, known for its seductive female cultivators and strong, robust male cultivators. Upon receiving Songwen's sudden invitation, Chen Feihe's brows slightly furrowed, and he felt a twinge of caution. However, thinking about the power behind the Spring Breeze Pavilion and the strong foundation establishment cultivator stationed there, he relaxed his guard. "Since fellow Taoist Zhang is so warmly inviting me, let's go to the Spring Breeze Pavilion." However, it must be in the main hall. One must always be cautious. Chun Feihe, after agreeing to Songwen's invitation, added this precaution. Songwen smiled, stepped aside, and gestured, "Elder Chun, please." The two then went to the main hall of the Spring Breeze Pavilion. Songwen, in a generous manner, ordered 2 pots of high-quality spirit tea. Chun Feihe took a sip of the spirit tea, his movements elegant, like a refined lady. "Fellow Taoist Zhang, you've gone through the trouble of inviting me to the Spring Breeze Pavilion and offering me this fine spirit tea. What is the purpose of this meeting? Please speak plainly." Songwen's gaze sharpened. It was clear that Chun Feihe, who could captivate a golden core ancestor, was not just relying on his appearance but was also quite astute. He smiled and said, "Elder Chun, you are overthinking it. I genuinely wish to befriend you. I have a set of items to enhance romantic activities. I'd appreciate it if you could evaluate them." Saying this, Songwen presented a storage bag. Chun Feihe looked somewhat suspicious but took the storage bag and used his spiritual sense to probe inside. Immediately, a look of surprise appeared on his face, his eyes gleaming with amazement, and his mouth slightly open as he exclaimed, "These intimate garments are so exquisite and novel. Where did you acquire them?" End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC. Currently up to 191 as of 25 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon, Pa-Cinder-TL. If you are content with the free chapters, you can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as 1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon, and please leave some reviews. Need more reviews. Chapter 123. Songwen smiled lightly. "These intimate garments are all designed by me personally and made by a skilled seamstress. Do they meet Elder Chen's approval?" The storage bag contained over a dozen sets of intimate clothing. Songwen had drawn the designs based on memories from his past life and had them sewn. The lingerie from the previous life, though not overly extravagant, was unique in style and thus stood out. This was a collision between 2 different worlds, a merging of cultures. "They're so beautiful and novel," Chun Feihe said with glowing eyes, repeatedly exclaiming in amazement. He withdrew his attention from the storage bag and once again focused on Songwen. His wariness of Songwen had vanished, replaced entirely by admiration. It was akin to a novice encountering a master in the industry. Chun Feihe no longer had any doubts about Songwen's preferences. If it weren't for an extreme fondness for cosmetics, how could a man come up with such innovative lingerie designs? "Fellow Taoist Zhang, you're exceptionally talented to have conceived such novel styles. Chin is truly impressed. I'm glad Elder Chin likes them. Consider these little trinkets as a gift from me to you." "Fellow Taoist Zhang is willing to give these to me?" Chun Feihe said, delighted. Songwen replied, "Of course, it's rare to meet someone like Elder Chin with similar interests. I wouldn't be stingy. If these items can bring a bit of joy to you and your partner, it's worth it. Then I won't refuse. Thank you, fellow Taoist Zhang." Chun Feihe happily tucked the storage bag into his bosom. The two then continued discussing cosmetics. In recent days, Songwen had sought advice from women in brothels and brushed up on makeup skills, combining this with some knowledge from his previous life. He was able to manage well enough to avoid arousing Chun Feihe's suspicion. During their conversation, Chun Feihe seemed somewhat distracted. He suddenly shifted the topic. "Fellow Taoist Zhang, how about we book a room and try out those intimate garments you designed?" Songwen felt a shiver of disgust at the suggestion and his heart chilled. No wonder Chun Feihe's interest seemed low. During their earlier conversation had been fixated on those dozen or so sets of lingerie. The thought of 2 men in a room trying on women's lingerie filled Songwen with a sense of revulsion. Songwen showed a troubled expression and said, "Let's skip that. It would be better for Elder Chin to take the garments home and enjoy them with your partner." Chun Feihe didn't think much of it, assuming that since this was their first meeting and they were not yet familiar. Songwen was hesitant. "My apologies for my rashness. I'll take my leave now. We'll talk more next time," Chun Feihe said, somewhat impatiently. Songwen stood up, smiling. "Then let's part ways today. We'll talk again another day. By the way, could Elder Chin give me a communication jade slip for easier contact?" Chun Feihe slapped his forehead in realization. How could I forget to exchange communication jade slips with fellow Taoist Zhang? Please forgive me. After exchanging jade slips, Chun Feihe quickly headed back to the corpse Demon Peak. Watching Chun Feihe's urgent departure, Songwen couldn't help but think, let's hope he doesn't suffer too much during his visits to the restroom in the next few days. For days later, Songwen received a message from Chun Feihe and they arranged to meet again at the Spring Breeze Pavilion. When Songwen saw Chun Feihe, his face was flushed, but he walked with a bit of a limp. Songwen sighed inwardly, realizing that the Golden Core ancestor was indeed formidable. as even a Foundation establishment cultivator's robust body couldn't withstand it. Upon meeting, Chan Feihe sincerely thanked Songwon, fellow Taoist Zhang. The intimate garments you designed are truly wonderful. I haven't left my residence for the past few days. Songwon responded somewhat awkwardly. I'm glad Elder Chen and your partner like them. Is there something specific you need? Chan Feihe's expression suddenly grew a bit uneasy as he spoke softly. Today, I came to ask if fellow Taoist Zhang has any other novel designs. Songwon's face showed a hint of difficulty. There are indeed some, but can Elder Chen's body handle them? Chan Feihe's elegant face smiled, showing a hint of shyness shifting to ease his pain. He was only half sitting on the edge of the chair. Fellow Taoist, don't worry. It's nothing. I have healing elixirs. Songwon couldn't help but admire Chan Feihe a little. Indeed, every cultivation path has its difficulties. Even being close to a golden core ancestor came with its share of hardship. Chan Feihe took the storage bag from Songwon, checked its contents with his divine sense, and his eyes suddenly lit up once again. It was a novel and unusual design he had never seen before. After chatting for a while and expressing repeated thanks, Chan Feihe joyfully took the storage bag and left Songwon also turned and went back to his cave residence. The storage bag he gave Chan Feihe contained various roleplay costumes, including maid outfits, bunny girl outfits, fox girl outfits. Now, Chan Feihe had mostly set aside his wariness of Songwon. If they interacted a few more times, Songwon could find a way to obtain the elder token from him. However, the world is always full of surprises. Upon returning to his cave, Songwon saw an unexpected visitor. It was Shi Shou, the Foundation establishment cultivator who had brought him into the corpse demon sect. Songwon had always considered him the greatest threat. Shi Shou looked at the completely darkened sky with a cold smile. Jiyin, you've kept me waiting. Songwon's heart raced with caution, his eyes fixed on Shi Shou as he quickly thought of a response. Whether to fight or flee would expose his real strength. A Foundation establishment cultivator pretending to be a chi-refining fifth-layer outer sect disciple would surely cause the corpse demon sect's higher-ups to speculate extensively. At that point, he might not even be able to leave the sect's territory if he didn't flee. How likely was it that he could survive against Shi Shou? After much consideration, Songwon decided to feign weakness and look for an opportune moment to act. From Songwon's perception, Shi Shou was only at the early stage of Foundation establishment. Though stronger than himself at the start of Foundation establishment, Shi Shou's strength was still limited, and Songwon still had a fighting chance. Moreover, whether Shi Shou was planning or merely coincidental, there was a significant opportunity to defeat him. Resolving his thoughts, Songwon's face showed a surprised expression. Disciple Ji-in greets Elder Shi. It's been years since we last met, and Elder Shi's demeanor remains as impressive as ever. Shi Shou was unmoved by Songwon's flattery, his face remaining cold with a sneer. Ji-in, you've hidden quite well. Upon hearing this, Songwon was startled. Could Shi Shou have already discovered his true strength? This was impossible. Even golden core cultivators couldn't see through his hidden strength. How could a Foundation establishment cultivator do so? While Songwon was still in doubt, Shi Shou continued. The soul aura of Du Qiu, who remained in the sect, has dissipated. This matter must be related to you, right? Hearing Shi Shou's words, Songwon felt slightly relieved. Realizing that Shi Shou hadn't discovered his secret, but only knew about Du Qiu's death and was probing him, Songwon had dealt with Du Qiu's death very cleanly, confident that no one could have discovered it. If it had been discovered, the one coming for him wouldn't be Shi Shou but the corpse demon sect's law enforcement hall. Songwon feigned surprise. What? Senior brother Du Qiu is dead? He was always kind to me, often visiting and guiding my cultivation. Senior brother Du Qiu was so young, how could he die? It's truly a case of heaven envying talent. As he spoke of his sorrow, Songwon's face was filled with grief and sadness. Shi Shou remained cold, seemingly seeing through Songwon's feigned performance. After a moment, seeing that Shi Shou did not respond, Songwon continued. Elder Shi, please understand. I am only at the chi-refining fifth layer. How could I be a match for senior brother Du Qiu? He was an inner sect disciple with at least chi-refining seventh layer cultivation. End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC. Currently up to 200 as of 26 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon. Pa*Cindertl if you are content with the free chapters. You can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as $1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon. And please leave some reviews. Need more reviews. Chapter 124. So, how do you explain where you went during the 20 or so days you were missing after leaving the secret realm? Song 1 was immediately rendered speechless. He hadn't expected that after killing Du Qiu, his whereabouts would still be known to Shou, however. Song 1 didn't dwell on it, as his departure from the sect for over 20 days was common knowledge among everyone in the Corpse Demon Cave and couldn't be hidden. Shou's face was filled with a teasing smile. Without waiting for Song 1 to explain, he waved his left hand. A surge of immense spiritual power descended upon Song 1. Song 1 instinctively tried to use his spiritual power to block it, but then, he suddenly realized and gave up resisting. This spiritual power was not meant to kill him, but to imprison him. Seeing that Song 1 was restrained, unable to move or speak, Shou summoned a flying sword, lightly jumped onto it, and used spiritual power to pull Song 1 along as he flew towards the sect's exit. Song 1 sensed that the power restraining him was not too strong, and a chi-refining 8th layer cultivator could break free from it. In other words, Shou hadn't discovered his true strength and only saw him as a minor chi-refining 5th layer cultivator. Song 1 was unsure where Shou intended to take him, but since they were heading outside the Corpse Demon sect, it was just as he hoped. Inside the Corpse Demon sect, he couldn't make a big move, but once outside, whether to fight or flee, Song 1 could act freely. Song 1 understood that Shou was likely impatient for him to reach Chi refining 6th layer and was probably planning to deal with him soon. But what was Shou's ultimate goal? Why did he want him to practice the Corpse King blood refinement manual? And why head outside the sect? With countless questions in mind, under the high-speed flight of the flying sword, they quickly reached a location several hundred miles from the Corpse Demon sect. Just as Song 1 felt they were far enough from the sect and prepared to act, Shou suddenly directed the sword light down towards a valley below. Song 1, with sharp senses, noticed a cave within a small mountain beside the valley, which had a few acres in size and contained the presence of 8 living people. These 8 were all cultivators, not very high in Cultivation 7 at Chi refining 6th layer and 1 at Chi refining 7th layer. Moreover, the aura of these 8 individuals was extremely familiar to Song 1. They all practiced the Corpse King blood refinement manual like him. This made Song 1 even more curious about Shou's purpose for bringing him here. Song 1 abandoned the idea of acting immediately. He had a premonition that he could find a better opportunity to act. Shou dragged Song 1 into the cave. In the center of the cave, there was an array engraved on the ground. Surrounded by 9 stone pillars, the 8 cultivators were all bound to the stone pillars with chains. Among the 8, 7 were men and 1 was a woman. The woman was the only one who had reached Chi refining 7th layer. The woman, over 40 years old, still had fair skin and retained her charm. It was easy to see from her face that she had been a stunning beauty in her youth. Seeing Shou arrive, the woman's expression was filled with sorrow and she asked in a mournful voice, "Husband, why have you imprisoned me and these people in this cave? What exactly do you intend to do?" Nearby, another young man bound to a stone pillar shouted angrily, "Master, how could you be so foolish? We are all people with evil spiritual roots, and we practice the Corpse King blood refinement technique passed down by Shou. Clearly, he has long harbored ill intentions towards us. We are nothing but materials for him to improve his own cultivation." The young man's voice was filled with hatred. From a humble background, he had viewed Shou, who taught him the cultivation technique and guided him as a fatherly figure, with deep respect and gratitude from the bottom of his heart. Yet, he never expected it all to be a deception. 7 years ago, when he was still young, he fell into a trap meticulously designed by Shou. The moment he encountered him, the woman's face was filled with sorrow and disbelief, tears as big as soybeans streaming down her face like rain, staining her sorrowful expression. Holding onto a glimmer of hope, the woman asked, "Shou, is what Meng said true?" Meng was the young man who had just spoken, and his name was given by Shou. At that time, Meng was just 13 years old, begging by the roadside. He was beaten to a bloody pulp in a fight with other beggars and was on the brink of death. At his last moments, Shou appeared like a Buddha coming to save all the suffering in the world. Not only did he heal Meng's injuries, but he also killed the beggars who had beaten him. From today, you will be my disciple if you want to. Avoid being bullied. You must cultivate diligently. In the future, when you encounter enemies, you must rely on your own hands to defeat them. Shou's teachings Meng remembered vividly. He had always adhered to his master's instructions, showing no mercy to enemies and being ruthless, eliminating all threats, but he never expected that his master was the real hungry wolf. Facing his partner's questions, Shou's expression remained unchanged. A chain flew out of his storage ring and wrapped around Song Wen. Then the chain levitated and pulled Song Wen, binding him to the remaining stone pillar. Song Wen did not resist at all. Allowing the chain to bind him tightly, he noticed that the chain was just an ordinary magical item. With his current strength and powerful physique, he could easily break it. After binding Song Wen, Shou addressed the woman, Wan Ro. We were once partners in cultivation. I'll make sure you understand everything. Back then, we were rootless and wandering cultivators. Although we lacked cultivation resources and had low strength, we lived a relatively free and easy life. But I was unwilling to live a mundane life. More than 30 years ago, I accidentally stumbled upon an ancient cave and found the Corpse King blood refinement technique inside. After switching to the Corpse King blood refinement technique, my cultivation advanced rapidly, quickly breaking through to the later stage of qi refining. When I reached the later stage of qi refining, the cultivation speed dropped drastically. At that time, I was already 30 years old. If I couldn't quickly advance my cultivation, there would be no chance of reaching foundation establishment in this lifetime. To speed up cultivation with the Corpse King blood refinement technique, there is a shortcut: consuming the blood essence of cultivators, which contains spiritual energy to enhance one's own cultivation. So, I joined the Corpse Demon sect, but due to my age, I could only become an outer disciple. I worked as a corpse dissector for the Demon Hall and began to hunt and kill cultivators everywhere, using their blood essence to support my cultivation. Finally, more than 10 years ago, after experiencing countless life and death crises, I achieved great merit for the sect and received a foundation establishment pill, successfully establishing my foundation. But after establishing my foundation, I found that having consumed too much cultivator blood essence had caused my blood and qi to become impure, hindering my cultivation. For more than 10 years, I've practiced day and night, yet I still can't break through the early stage of foundation establishment. Yet heaven does not completely close all doors. I found a solution in the Corpse King blood refinement technique. That is to devour the spiritual energy and blood essence of those who also practice the Corpse King blood refinement technique. By using spiritual energy and blood essence of the same origin, I can overcome the bottleneck in my cultivation and refine the blood essence to increase its purity. End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC. Currently up to 200 as of 26 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon. Pa-Cinder-TL. If you are content with the free chapters, you can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as $1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon, and please leave some reviews. Need more reviews. Chapter 125. 10 years ago, I began searching for people with 5-element spiritual roots and good root quality to whom I could impart the Corpse King blood refinement technique. To ensure the purity of the cultivator's blood essence, I removed the method of devouring others' blood essence to enhance spiritual power from the publicly taught technique to prevent leakage of the technique. I also removed the content related to refining corpse aura. This formation beneath us is called the 9 Curves Devouring Spirit Formation. It's a formation recorded in the Corpse King blood refinement technique used to extract spiritual power and refine blood essence. It took me 3 years to comprehend and set up this formation. I taught 32 people, but some died halfway, some had poor opportunities and comprehension, and their progress was extremely slow, so I dealt with them. In the end, only you 9 are left. Among you 9, 1 is my wife, 1 is my disciple, 3 are affiliated family cultivators from the Corpse Demon sect, 2 are wandering cultivators, and 2 are outer disciples of the Corpse Demon sect. All 9 of you are at the 6th level of qi refining. However, 1 of you is only at the 5th level of qi refining. Originally, my plan had to be delayed. At this point, Shou paused and walked to his wife's side, speaking gently. I didn't expect that, Wan Ro, you would suddenly break through to the 7th level of qi refining half a month ago. Perfectly compensating for the deficiency in the other person's cultivation, this allowed me to advance my plan. I must thank you, my dear wife. After hearing Sure Shou's explanation, Wan Ro did not show anger or hatred, but only sadness and concern. Husband, stop this. You've already gone astray. You're not practicing a technique, but are controlled by it. Becoming a puppet that only knows how to cultivate. Even if your cultivation reaches great heights, what's the point if you sacrifice your wife and disciples? You've lost your humanity entirely. No matter how long you live, you will just be a living corpse. Don't you remember the carefree and happy days when we were wandering cultivators? Stop this. Let's leave the corpse demon sect together and find a place in the mortal world to live as a mortal couple. Sure Shou smiled bitterly and said, there's no turning back. Since the day I found the Corpse King blood refinement technique, everything has been set in stone. For the sake of immortality and stronger cultivation, I'm willing to pay any price. As he spoke the last few words, Sure Shou's expression grew somewhat frenzied, as if using this madness to mask the remaining traces of conscience and guilt within him. He continued to address Wan Ro. I originally didn't want to involve you. But 20 years ago, after I established my foundation, you were afraid of aging before me and being left alone in this world. You voluntarily dispersed your cultivation, switched to the Corpse King blood refinement technique, hoping to establish a foundation like me. But you didn't know the cost I paid for practicing the Corpse King blood refinement technique. How many people I killed. And you just happened to have 5-element spiritual roots, perfect for practicing the Corpse King blood refinement technique. Don't blame me, perhaps it's fate, to become a strong cultivator, especially a demonic one. It's destined to be heartless and ruthless. All right, Wan Ro. Now you understand the situation and consequences. You can be clear about everything. With that, Sure Shou walked to the center of the formation and sat down cross-legged, seeing the impending disaster. The bound people began to curse loudly. Only Wan Ro cried out in pain and tears. Husband, stop this. I am carrying your child. The child is just beginning to form. You might not sense it with your spiritual sense, but I can clearly feel a small life growing inside me. In front of Sure Shou, a formation disc was floating, and he was making hand seals to prepare for the formation. Hearing his wife's words, he suddenly froze. His wife was pregnant. This was something he had never expected. They had been married for over 30 years and had never had a child. He had always thought they would never have descendants in this lifetime. Yet now, at this critical moment, his wife suddenly told him she was pregnant with his child. Sure Shou looked up at his bound wife with a complex and unreadable expression, sometimes harsh, sometimes tender, sometimes pained, and sometimes guilty. After many changes in expression, Sure Shou's eyes eventually turned cold and devoid of emotion. Looking at his wife of 30 years, as if she were a stranger, Sure Shou used his spiritual power to block his hearing, afraid that his wife's desperate pleas might sway his heart. If it's for immortality, both familial bonds and personal emotions can be discarded, and must be discarded. Sever all emotions. Only then can one seek the supreme path. From now on, Sure Shou's heart would hold only the pursuit of immortality. Sure Shou performed several hand seals on the formation disc, which emitted a green light. The formation patterns on the ground began to light up one by one. Shining with green brilliance, 36 mid-grade spirit stones flew out from Sure Shou's storage ring and fell into the grooves at the edge of the formation. In an instant, the green light within the formation surged greatly, illuminating the entire cave with a bright green glow. The 9 people on the stone pillars gradually felt a tremendous force enveloping them, as if it were going to crush them into pieces and drain all their blood, leaving not a trace behind. Sure Shou was focused and intent, his eyes fixed on the formation disc as he executed one hand seal after another, with beads of sweat beginning to appear on his forehead clearly. Controlling the 9 curves devouring spirit formation was not an easy task for Sure Shou. It consumed a large amount of his mental energy, except for Song One. The others bound to the stone pillars showed expressions of intense pain under the enormous pressure, their skin starting to seep blood, staining the 8 of them as blood-soaked figures. Among the 8, only Wan Ro, who had the highest cultivation, was in slightly better condition. For Song One, the pressure from the formation was not enough to harm his physical body. It's time to act. Song Wen's gaze was sharp, his muscles swelling as he forcefully struggled with his arms. Crack! The sound of breaking chains echoed. The chains binding Song Wen snapped into several pieces, falling to the ground at the same time. A cold gleam flashed, reaching Sure Shou in an instant. After breaking through to the foundation establishment stage, Song Wen had refined the cold moon blade, which was now able to fully exert its power as a spiritual weapon. Song Wen was confident that, if he encountered the pseudo-Taoist level copper corpse in the blood secret realm again, he could kill it solely with the cold moon blade. Caught off guard by the sudden change, Shou had no way to block the extremely sharp cold moon blade. In his hurried state, forced into a corner, he could only raise the formation disc in front of him to block the cold moon blade. Clang! The cold moon blade struck the formation disc. The formation disc immediately shattered into pieces, turning into fragments. The cold moon blade was also blocked, its power greatly diminished, no longer a threat to Shou. With the formation disc shattered, the formation's operation stopped immediately and the green light vanished without a trace. Shou was also affected by the backlash from the broken formation disc, with a trace of blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were fierce, like burning flames, and he gritted his teeth, saying, "Jin, it's you. You've actually reached Foundation Establishment." As he spoke, a Taoist-level corpse puppet was summoned by Shou. Poof! The cold moon blade, which came swirling back, was blocked by the corpse puppet's resilient hand, leaving only a deep scar. Shou looked around the cave with increasing fury. With the formation broken, apart from Song Wen, 7 of the remaining 8 had died, leaving only his wife Wan Rose still breathing. This meant that the 10 years of planning he had prepared were all in vain. End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC. Currently up to 200 as of 26 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon, Pa Cindertl. If you are content with the free chapters, you can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as 1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon, and please leave some reviews. Need more reviews. Chapter 126. I Want You Dead. A dense, malevolent aura surged around Shou. His figure gradually became emaciated, his skin turning grayish and dry, and 2 long fangs extended from his mouth. His appearance was not much different from when Song Wen had turned into a corpse, except that the malevolent aura around him was even denser. Shou suddenly exerted force with his feet, causing the rocks beneath him to explode. He shot forward like an arrow towards Song Wen. Even before he reached him, Shou's hands had transformed into claws, with dark, glossy nails like sharp iron blades. Facing the oncoming Shou, Song Wen's expression remained calm and composed, showing no signs of panic. The recent surprise attack with the cold moon blade had failed, which was somewhat disappointing, but just disappointing, nothing more. Song Wen patted the corpse bag at his waist, and a pseudo-second-grade bronze corpse puppet was summoned. This corpse puppet had a chance to be refined into a genuine bronze-grade corpse puppet, but Song Wen had only recently reached Foundation Establishment and had not yet collected enough spiritual materials. The pseudo-second-grade bronze corpse puppet charged at Shou's corpse puppet. Song Wen didn't expect it to block Shou's attack, but hoped it could buy him some time. As Shou's claws were about to reach Song Wen, a green large shield suddenly appeared around Song Wen, completely enclosing him. At that moment, the cold moon blade struck from behind, piercing Shou's back. Song Wen had also transformed into a zombie, with dark claws emitting a chilling gleam. Reaching for Shou's head, Song Wen's tactic was to trade injuries for injuries. Shou's lips curled into a disdainful smile. How dare a newly established Foundation Establishment cultivator like you challenge him, a veteran Foundation Establishment cultivator of 20 years, with such a tactic? Although both were at the early Foundation Establishment stage, there was still a significant difference in their strength. At this moment, Shou's anger towards Song Wen for disrupting the formation had faded. He suddenly realized that with Song Wen, a Foundation Establishment cultivator, he no longer needed to extract blood essence from the 9 Qi refinement cultivators. Just Song Wen alone was worth more than all of them combined. His only thought now was to capture Song Wen, devour his blood essence, and refine the spiritual energy within him to break through to the mid-Foundation Establishment stage. Shou's claws struck the bronze bell, causing sparks to fly and an extremely uncomfortable, piercing sound to ring out. The bell bore 4 long claw marks but did not shatter. After Song Wen's breakthrough to Foundation Establishment, the power of the 10,000 poisons body had also risen dramatically, successfully blocking Shou's full-force attack. At the same time, Song Wen's hands were covered in corpse poison and metal essence, reaching Shou's left face. Ghostly claw. Shou's head jerked to the left, colliding with Song Wen's hand. Bang! Song Wen's fingers trembled slightly and a wave of pain surged from his fingertips. This claw strike didn't manage to shatter Shou's hard skull, it only tore off a large piece of flesh from his face. The flesh was tough, like old tree bark, and showed no blood. Shou's left face was stripped of flesh, revealing a somewhat blackened skull with no blood at the wound, looking extremely terrifying and eerie. At this moment, the cold moon blade's attack also arrived. A small shield appeared behind Shou, perfectly blocking the cold moon blade. While Songwen was attacking, Shou was not idle. He struck the bell with 2 more claws. The green light of the bronze bell flickered and then dispersed into tiny green particles. The bronze bell was shattered. Shou's face revealed a ferocious smile, and with his horrifying appearance, he looked like a demon emerging from hell. Die. Shou's clawed hand grasped Songwen's throat. Songwen neither dodged nor avoided. He clawed at Shou's left eye. Shou's face showed a moment of delight as his claw pierced the fragile throat of his opponent. Using his spiritual power to directly crush half of Songwen's neck with no support, Songwen's head slumped to one side, hanging on by a thin strip of flesh. The joy on Shou's face was short-lived. His eyes soon filled with disbelief as he realized that the throat he had torn open wasn't Songwen but just an ordinary corpse puppet. Shou's heart sank in shock. Where was Jiyin? Where did he go? Why was he killing a mere corpse puppet? Could it be the rumored substitute corpse technique? As these thoughts flashed through Shou's mind, he suddenly felt something crawling in his left eye. It turned out that when Shou had grabbed Songwen's throat, Songwen's hand had also clawed at his left eye at that moment. Shou had tilted his head back to avoid the sharpest nails, but his eye was still scratched by Songwen's hand. Before Shou could figure out what was wrong with his left eye, he suddenly sensed a figure appearing behind him. It was Jiyin. Jiyin's left hand wielded a blade, and his right hand was a claw, thrusting towards Shou's sides. Shou's face changed drastically. He hurriedly activated the small shield behind him while simultaneously turning to strike the figure behind him with a palm puff. The small shield blocked the claw strike from the right, but failed to stop the cold moon blade in the left hand. The cold moon blade pierced Shou's left waist with spiritual power like a raging torrent, flooding into Shou's body through the blade. Shou's left waist instantly erupted with a large hole, exposing his internal organs immediately. Shou's left kidney was shredded by the spiritual power, and his vital energy rapidly drained away. Bang! Shou's palm strike hit, and the head of the figure behind him exploded into pieces. What made Shou even more furious and helpless was that it was still a corpse puppet, a Qi refinement 4th layer corpse puppet. The figure flickered, and Songwen's form appeared unscathed 100 meters away. Shou glared angrily at Songwen from afar, one hand supporting his injured left waist and the other taking out 2 healing pills, swallowing them. Jiyin, I underestimated you. In just a few years, not only have you succeeded in foundation establishment, but you've also refined such a bizarre corpse substitute technique. I'm curious, where did you learn this substitute corpse technique? And how did you manage to refine 2 of them? Songwen exhaled deeply. Although the battle had only lasted a few breaths, it had drained a significant amount of his spiritual power and mental energy. Knowing that his opponent was buying time to heal, Songwen wasn't in a hurry to act. He had a smile on his face. He had more than just 2 substitute corpses. The most challenging part of refining substitute corpses was the soul extraction process. Repeatedly stripping the soul tether could cause irreversible damage to the soul. However, for Songwen, this was not an issue. Through repeated attempts, he was certain that each stripping of the soul tether required devouring the souls of 2 to 3 cultivators of the same level to repair the soul. Thus, he was able to refine a large number of substitute corpses. Given his cautious nature, he would never just refine 1 or 2 substitute corpses. Over the years, he had refined more than a dozen. Elder Sure, while you're still trying to buy time to heal, haven't you noticed something? In your head. End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC. Currently up to 200 as of 26 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon, Pa-Cinder-TL. If you are content with the free chapters, you can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as 1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon, and please leave some reviews. Need more reviews. Chapter 127. Shou's face was filled with alarm. Just now, he had felt something crawling in his left eye, but the sudden attack from Songwen had left him no time to react. With this reminder from Songwen, Shou suddenly realized that 2 small insects had crawled into his skull through the eye socket and were now making their way towards his brain. Goo insects. 2 Qi refinement 9th layer goo insects. Shou's eyes widened in terror. He quickly mobilized all his spiritual power, gathering it in his head, trying to exterminate the insects before they could cause significant damage. Suddenly, a sharp, stabbing pain pierced his chest. A scan of his spiritual sense revealed that there were 4 goo insects in his heart as well. At the moment he was focusing spiritual power on his head, the insects had taken the opportunity to break through his blood vessels and burrow into his heart. At this moment, there was a whooshing sound from his left side, a cold glint shot straight towards his throat. Surrounded by enemies on 3 sides, Shou's composure shattered and he was no longer as calm and confident as before. Instinctively, he activated the small shield to block the cold moon blade. Suddenly, an excruciating pain surged through his brain. Causing his internal spiritual power to stagnate, the cold moon blade skimmed past the edge of the small shield that had been a moment too late, cutting through Shou's throat. His head flew high into the air. Song Wen's figure moved like lightning. Before the head could even hit the ground, he caught Shou's head in one hand and his falling body in the other. At this moment, Shou's soul had not yet departed his body, it was still within his head's sea of consciousness. Song Wen did not consume Shou's soul but instead performed a spell to seal Shou's soul within his head, soul binding technique. This was a spell that a chi refinement mid-stage cultivator could practice. It was the most commonly used spell by demonic cultivators to bind souls. However, Song Wen had underestimated the strength of Shou's soul. Unlike the souls he had previously devoured, a mortal's soul would become muddled and easy to consume after death. Although the souls of chi refinement cultivators could retain their clarity, they had no resistance. Shou, being a foundation establishment cultivator with spiritual consciousness, had a stronger soul. After death, his soul remained active and managed to avoid Song Wen's soul binding technique. Shou's soul did not attempt to escape but instead launched an attack on Song Wen's sea of consciousness. During this time, he even transmitted a message to Song Wen. Jiin, you attempt to bind my soul, you must be a newly established foundation cultivator. Unaware that a foundation cultivator with spiritual consciousness can seize another's body. Ha, now this body is mine. Strong, with pure blood and a deep foundation, with 2 cultivation methods, heaven has not abandoned me. To think that in such a dire situation I could seize such a perfect body. Song Wen was momentarily startled by the sudden turn of events but quickly calmed down. His sea of consciousness could devour even the fragmentary souls of golden core cultivators, so Shou's foundation establishment soul could not stir up much trouble. As Shou's soul rushed into Song Wen's sea of consciousness, ready to use all its power to assault it, a massive black hole appeared before him. The black hole seemed boundless, as if it occupied Song Wen's entire sea of consciousness. A powerful, irresistible suction force emanated from the black hole. Shou felt as insignificant as an ant before the black hole, and at that moment, he even doubted that Song Wen might be an ancient, powerful being reincarnated. How else could such a terrifying black hole, seemingly capable of devouring everything, exist within his sea of consciousness? Just as Shou felt his soul was about to be swallowed and his consciousness scattered, a thought flashed through his mind. I wonder how Wanro, who is still bound to the stone pillar, is doing? I wonder if Jiin will spare her and the child in her womb. In this desperate situation, a surge of attachment towards his wife and the unborn child filled Shou's heart. At this crucial moment, the suction power of the black hole suddenly vanished. However, the black hole did not disappear. It remained like a mountain pressing down on Shou, rendering his soul immobile outside the sea of consciousness. Song Wen had a smile on his face. This was the first time he attempted to control the black hole in the sea of consciousness, and he was pleasantly surprised that it worked. Shou's soul could not dissipate for the time being and was still useful. Song Wen used the power of the soul from his sea of consciousness to weave a gigantic net, binding and sealing Shou's soul within the sea of consciousness. As the soul was sealed, Shou's awareness gradually blurred. After completing this, the black hole in the sea of consciousness slowly disappeared and vanished without a trace. When Song Wen devoured Shou's blood essence, he was surprised to find that Shou's body contained a spiritual power that also flowed into his own. This spiritual power was absorbed by Song Wen's body, giving him the sensation of consuming a powerful elixir, gradually enhancing his physical strength. Unfamiliar with this situation, Song Wen was somewhat puzzled. After repeatedly checking his body and confirming there were no abnormalities, he relaxed a bit, unable to find the reason for this phenomenon. Song Wen decided not to dwell on it. He then turned his attention to the 8 people bound to the stone pillars. Except for Wanro, the other 7 had already lost their breath. Song Wen devoured the blood essence and souls of the 7 deceased individuals one by one before finally approaching Wanro. Wanro's injuries were severe due to the immense pressure from the formation. Her skin was torn in multiple places. With blood oozing out, her spine was misaligned in several places and her leg bones were Fractured, her body was no longer recognizable and she could only barely maintain a standing posture due to the iron chains binding her to the stone pillar. Seeing Songwon approach, Wonro did not immediately act. A glimmer of hope appeared on her face as she clung to the hope of survival. She still did not want to die. She was carrying a child and wanted her baby to come into this world and see its wonders. Please don't kill me, I have. Before she could finish, a powerful hand like a Vajra grabbed her by the top of her head. A powerful spiritual force surged from her head into her sea of consciousness. This spiritual force was overwhelming compared to her own, instantly submerging her awareness. Soul search technique. This was a secret technique that only Foundation establishment cultivators could practice, capable of searching another's soul and extracting their memories. As for whether the memories obtained would be useful, it depended on luck. Songwon had purchased this soul search technique from a shop in the marketplace after his Foundation establishment, in the demonic path. This technique was quite common, with many Foundation establishment cultivators practicing it. As Songwon disguised himself as an external Foundation establishment cultivator, it was easy for him to obtain Wonro's soul power was much weaker compared to Songwen's and, being injured, offered little resistance. Songwen easily accessed all her memories. Her memories mostly consisted of her time spent in the cave dwelling, rarely interacting with others, and never engaging in conflicts. With Shursho providing cultivation resources, she did not need to venture out. She was a woman who avoided disputes. Although she was a demonic cultivator, her personality was very gentle and unviolent, just as her name suggested. Perhaps because of this, when Shursho intended to use her for cultivation, she harbored no hatred but rather begged and advised him. End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC. Currently up to 200 as of 26 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon. Pasindertl. If you are content with the free chapters, you can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as $1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon. And please leave some reviews. Need more reviews. Chapter 128. Songwen's soul search on Wonro was aimed at understanding Shursho's daily behavior, his connections with the sex cultivators, and, most importantly, whether Shursho was acquainted with the female cultivator stationed at the Foundation Establishment Transmission Hall. Songwen had gone to great lengths to get close to Chunfeiha, primarily to obtain an Elder's Token from him. Now that Shursho was dead, he naturally acquired the Elder's Token. This was also why Songwen did not devour Shursho's soul. If Shursho's soul dissipated, the residual soul aura left in the corpse demon sect would also disappear. Once the corpse demon sect learned of Shursho's death, the Elder's Token would become useless. In fact, searching Shursho's soul would have been ideal. But Shursho had jumped into Songwen's sea of consciousness of his own accord before Songwen could even use the soul binding technique. Moreover, Songwen's soul power was not much stronger than Shursho's. Although Shursho's soul was trapped in the sea of consciousness and unconscious, forcibly searching his soul would certainly awaken him. If Shursho regained consciousness, although he could not escape the sea of consciousness, he could disintegrate his soul, which would be a loss for Songwen. Wonro, on the other hand, was different. Her soul power was weak, and Songwen could freely search her soul through Wonro's memories. Songwen learned that Shursho was a very indifferent and reclusive person, rarely interacting with other cultivators except for his partner, Wonro. This was not surprising, as there were few demonic cultivators who were not indifferent or reclusive. After all, among demonic cultivators, there were many who betrayed their masters or killed their disciples and friends. How many demonic cultivators would dare to genuinely connect with others? This information gave Songwen the possibility of disguising himself as Shursho to enter the Foundation Establishment Transmission Hall. After forcibly searching Wonro's soul, her soul was injured and her spirit dissipated, leaving her in a dazed state. Songwen looked at the woman before him with some pity. She was the only person who could be considered kind that Songwen had encountered in his cultivation journey. Yet she had been betrayed by her closest partner. Songwen shook his head, dismissing the somewhat ridiculous thought in his mind. Although Shursho was cold and unfeeling, Songwen himself was not much better. The only difference might be that he had no close relatives in this world, so betrayal was not a concern. Perhaps, from the moment I crossed into this world, it was destined that I would lead a lonely life. Songwen felt a twinge of sorrow. However, he did not hesitate in his actions. With a sudden force, Wonro's head exploded and she lost her breath instantly. Songwen wanted to let the poor woman's soul reincarnate. But he quickly realized that demonic cultivators could not afford such leniency. He realized that, since the moment he killed Sure Show, his mindset had subtly changed. Previously, with Sure Show as a threat, he was compelled to practice tirelessly without pause, unwavering in his determination to become stronger. The moment Sure Show died, the sense of urgency in his heart dissipated, lowering his vigilance. I must never let my guard down, since I have embarked on this path of cultivation and demonic ways. There will be no peaceful days, there will only be deceit and hidden dangers. To survive in this cultivation world, one must always tread carefully and be vigilant. Song Wen's gaze became resolute and cold as he swiftly devoured Wan Ro's soul. He began handling the corpses of the 9 individuals. Among them, only Sure Show had a storage ring, the others had no storage bags, likely seized by Sure Show. Songwon put Sure Show's storage ring into his own possession and piled up the 9 corpses, burning them to ashes with a fierce fire. He then used a windstorm technique to scatter the ashes. Next, he activated the cold moon blade to destroy the formation patterns on the ground. After stripping away a layer of the ground's rock, Songwon was finally satisfied, turning his attention to the 2 corpses beside him. His own fake second-tier corpse had already lost its human form. Half of the head was blasted away. One arm was torn off, a leg was broken, and the chest cavity was empty. The damage was not too severe, slightly better than Songwon had expected. With some new refinement, it could be restored. Sure Show's second-tier corpse puppet, however, remained completely unharmed, standing there intact. When Songwon was captured by Sure Show, it was just at nightfall. By the time he returned to his cave, the sky was already beginning to lighten. Entering the cave, Songwon approached the corpse fiend well, where streams of corpse fiend aura flowed out. At this point, the corpse fiend aura in the well could no longer meet Songwen's cultivation needs. He had to purchase the corpse fiend aura he used for cultivation. Songwen climbed down the well, and after descending several meters, he pushed against the stone wall, shifting a 2-inch square stone. A small niche appeared in front of Songwon. Inside the niche was a blue ring, the storage ring that belonged to Ing and I. This niche had been used by Songwon to hide his blood essence in the past. It also contained magical artifacts, pills, and cultivation techniques from the secret realm that had not yet been used, as well as most of his spirit stones. These were temporarily stored here. Storage rings and bags do not emit any spiritual fluctuations when not in use, coupled with the concealment provided by the corpse fiend aura in the well. It was difficult to detect the niche unless someone went down the well and inspected it carefully. On the way back, Songwon had already examined Sure Show's storage ring. He found the true version of the Corpse King blood refining technique, recorded on a blood-colored plaque the size of a palm. The Corpse King blood refining technique on the blood-colored plaque included the complete method for cultivating from chi refining to golden core stage. This meant that Songwon wouldn't need to worry about the technique before reaching the nascent soul stage. Apart from that, there were no other techniques. The secret methods and spells Sure Show practiced were all obtained from the Corpse Demon Sect's transmission hall. To prevent the leakage of techniques, the transmission hall used one-time transmission jade slips. Songwon was somewhat surprised and disappointed to find that Sure Show did not have any offensive magical artifacts. The only magical artifact was the small shield used during his battle with Songwon. Even the flying sword Sure Show used for sword control was just a high-quality magical artifact. The flying ship that Songwon had once boarded when coerced into the Corpse Demon Sect was also missing. It was unclear whether Sure Show had sold it over the years due to financial difficulties or if the ship had never been his to begin with. Perhaps he borrowed it from the sect for the mission and returned it afterward. The small shield was named the Turtle Snake Shield. It was unknown where Sure Show obtained it, but its quality was very high, making it a mid-grade magical artifact. With Songwon's current cultivation, he could not fully activate the Turtle Snake Shield. He estimated that he would need at least to be at the mid-foundation establishment stage to fully utilize the shield's power. This might be why, during Songwon's battle with Sure Show, the Turtle Snake Shield could only provide basic defense without exhibiting any extraordinary effects. Apart from these items, the storage ring contained only ordinary item pills, spirit stones, and cultivation resources. Songwon took out the useful pills and Corpse Fiend aura resources for himself, leaving the rest in the storage ring. Placing the storage ring back into the niche, Songwon returned to the upper part of the cave. He picked up the blood-colored plaque recording the Corpse King blood refining technique and began to carefully review the technique's contents. From beginning to end, he examined every word and sentence. He was concerned that Sure Show might have tampered with the Corpse King blood refining technique he had previously cultivated, so he could not afford to be careless. After finishing the chi refining section, Songwon was relieved the Corpse King blood refining technique he had practiced previously was intact, but it lacked content on truly refining Corpse Fiend aura. Upon reflection, Shou's intention in having Songwon practice the Corpse King blood refining technique was to absorb Songwon's spiritual energy and blood essence to improve his own realm. So he naturally would not have altered the technique. According to the preface of the Corpse King blood refining technique, Songwon learned that it was inherited from an ancient sect named the Divine Bloodgate. This was a sect Songwon had heard of in passing, which seemed to have disappeared into the annals of history long ago. End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC. Currently up to 200 as of 26 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon, Pa_Cinder_TL. If you are content with the free chapters, you can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as $1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon, and please leave some reviews. Need more reviews. Chapter 129. With the continuation of the Corpse King blood refining technique, Songwon could resume his cultivation. He obtained 3 bottles of Ein Fiend Dew from Shou's storage ring. This was an attribute treasure condensed from high-purity Corpse Fiend aura, perfectly suited for Songwon's current cultivation needs. Suppressing his urge to start cultivating immediately, Songwon headed to the corpse dissection cave. It was almost dawn, which was the time he visited the cave every day. Today, Songwon slightly increased the speed of corpse disposal and finished by the afternoon's 5th hour. After leaving the corpse dissection cave, Songwon returned to his cave, performed the water mirror technique, and began disguising himself. TL note: previously called Mortal Realms Disguise Technique. Unlike his casual disguises in the past, today he had a specific target. He needed to make himself look like Shou. After several attempts, Songwon had perfected this disguise technique to a high degree. In just 15 minutes, his appearance and physique closely resembled Shou's. He adjusted his body shape using control over his muscles and bones. Next, Songwon began to adjust his aura. Since both he and Shou practiced the Corpse King blood refining technique, mimicking Shou's aura was not too difficult. Once his aura was matched to Shou's as closely as possible, he was satisfied and donned a black cloak, ensuring no one was outside the cave. Songwon exited, used his flight technique, and soared towards the transmission hall. In fact, the best way to imitate Shou would be to use sword control for flying. However, Songwon did not know sword control, and Shou's storage ring did not contain any sword control techniques. Therefore, Songwon had to use his flight technique. After reaching the foundation establishment stage, the flight technique's effectiveness had greatly increased, making him several times faster and quite graceful, resembling wind-walking. Moments later, Songwon landed outside the foundation establishment transmission hall. After calming his nerves, he held Shou's elder token and walked towards the female cultivator at the hall entrance. The female cultivator glanced at Songwon's cloaked figure and scanned the elder token in Songwon with her spiritual sense before tersely stating a few words. "Do you know the rules?" Songwon's heart skipped a beat. Rules? What rules? Were they similar to those of the Qi refining transmission hall? Or were there additional rules for the Foundation Establishment Transmission Hall? The rules for the Qi Refining Transmission Hall were simple. No destruction of any items in the hall. No taking away the true copies of techniques. Hand over the selected transmission jade slip to the steward, who would make a one-time jade slip copy for the disciple. A soul oath was required, and techniques were not to be shared with anyone fearing exposure. Songwon did not dare to speak recklessly and simply nodded, remaining silent. Seeing Songwon nod, the female cultivator assumed he understood the rules, returned the elder token to him, and said, "Go in." With a bit of anxiety about what the so-called rules might entail, Songwon entered the transmission hall. Since he was here, he should make the best of it. Songwon calmed himself and began to examine the transmission hall. The hall was empty, with hundreds of stone platforms neatly arranged. Inside each platform had a different technique placed upon it. These techniques ranged from books, jade slips, to unknown desiccated bones, all peculiar and diverse. Unlike the Qi refining transmission hall, where techniques could be freely handled, each technique in the Foundation Establishment Transmission Hall was covered by a miniature formation, allowing for observation but not direct handling. On the edges of each stone platform, there was a small booklet. Songwon picked up one of the booklets at random. It contained a brief introduction and outline of the technique, along with its price. The technique he held was a corpse path cultivation method priced at 5,000 spirit stones. This price was quite low for a complete foundation establishment technique. If this technique were outside, its price would be at least doubled after setting the booklet down. Songwon picked up and reviewed each booklet on the stone platforms. Out of the over 100 techniques in the hall, more than half were cultivation techniques, with fewer than half being spells and secret methods. Songwon could not cultivate all the techniques due to his limited cultivation level, so he chose only 3 techniques: the advanced techniques of blood sacrifice art and ghostly claws, as well as a flying sword technique. He most wanted to cultivate the advanced blood escape technique, but could not find it. Songwon couldn't find the advanced technique for the blood escape technique, which was what he wanted to cultivate the most. It was unclear whether the advanced technique didn't exist or if the corpse demon sect simply didn't include it here. Feeling a bit dissatisfied with only selecting these 3 techniques despite the significant risk of entering the transmission hall, Songwon also picked up a secret technique for refining corpse puppets called True Explanation of Corpse Puppets. The corpse puppet refining technique he had previously practiced was a basic one, but this true explanation of corpse puppets was far more profound. It even included a method called corpse explosion technique, which could trigger the self-destruction of a corpse puppet with the techniques chosen. Songwon now needed to find the middle-aged female cultivator to make copies of the techniques. He was somewhat unsettled as he still did not fully understand what the so-called rules were. Holding the 4 booklets, Songwon approached the hall's exterior and spoke in a hoarse voice. "I have made my selection, these 4. The female cultivator glanced at Songwon but did not speak. Taking the 4 booklets from him, she flipped through the booklets and then extended her hand. Seeing her outstretched hand, Songwon felt a pang of anxiety. He was unsure what she was asking for. Could it be spirit stones? The thought crossed his mind, and he quickly retrieved a storage bag containing 10,000 spirit stones, which was the price for the 4 techniques. The female cultivator took the storage bag and used her spiritual sense to check the number of spirit stones inside. After confirming everything was correct, she extended her hand again. Seeing her hand extended once more, Songwon grew increasingly nervous and impatient. He genuinely didn't know what else to give. However, Songwon maintained a calm expression, appearing indifferent as usual. Fortunately, the female cultivator, noticing that Songwon hadn't moved, spoke up with a hint of annoyance. "Give me your identity token." Songwon, without showing any emotion, handed over the elder token. He was now even more puzzled about what the token was needed for. The female cultivator took the elder token and placed it into a round disc about the size of a bowl, which had a slot perfectly matching the size of the token. She inserted the elder token into the slot. Immediately, the disc emitted a burst of white light. After a moment, the white light faded. The female cultivator looked up at Songwon and said, "Your sect contribution is insufficient. You only have 910 contributions, but these 4 techniques require 1,000 contributions, so you are short by 90. Songwon's mind raced. Sect contribution? What is that? He had heard about it before. Could it be a specific requirement for foundation establishment elders? Fortunately, it was only a shortfall of 90. Moreover, the middle-aged female cultivator hadn't recognized his disguised identity and only mentioned the contribution shortage, which was actually good news for Songwon. A smile appeared on his face as he continued with his hoarse voice. "It was my oversight. Could the steward make an exception?" Saying this, Songwon took out another storage bag containing 90 spirit stones and handed it over. The female cultivator looked at Songwon with a half-smile, making him feel uneasy. He couldn't help but wonder if he was expected to bribe her. End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC. Currently up to 202 as of 27 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon, Pa-Cinder-TL. If you are content with the free chapters, you can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as 1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon, and please leave some reviews. Need more reviews. Chapter 130. While Songwon was deep in thought, the female cultivator suddenly reached out to take the spirit stones from Songwon. After inspecting them with her spiritual sense and being satisfied, she placed them into her storage. "I've stayed in the transmission hall for so long, and this is the first time I've encountered someone as interesting as Elder Sure. I've made up the contribution you were missing." Songwon clasped his hands in gratitude. "Thank you, steward." The female cultivator nodded, stood up from her seated position on the meditation mat, and turned to walk into the transmission hall. Before entering, she reminded him, "Wait here for a moment while I make the copies of the techniques." As Songwon watched her figure disappear into the hall, he felt a lingering unease. He had made 2 mistakes. First, he didn't realize the elder token contained information about contributions, and second, his chosen techniques exceeded his available contribution points. Fortunately, it hadn't drawn the female cultivator's attention after waiting for a short while. Songwon grew more anxious, but the female cultivator finally came out. She handed Songwon the 4 jade slips and said, "These are the techniques you requested." "Thank you." Songwon took the techniques, not daring to stay a moment longer, and turned to head down the mountain. The female cultivator watched Songwon leave, a cryptic smile appearing on her lips. "This elder sure has a great secret. If I'm not mistaken, 20 years ago, when he first established his foundation, he was already practicing the sword flight technique. I hope the secrets you carry won't disappoint me." Songwon would never have guessed that what he considered mistakes had actually exposed him due to the techniques he selected. A quarter of an hour later, as the female cultivator was meditating, a look of surprise crossed her face. "How did the spiritual mark I left on the jade slips disappear?" Logically, someone at the foundation establishment stage should never have been able to detect a mark left by a later stage cultivator, and even if they did, they shouldn't have been able to erase it so quickly. However, the astonishment on her face soon turned to greed and eagerness. The more mysterious Sure Show was, the greater the secrets he might have, and the more she would gain. "You can't escape the temple if you fled the monk, Sure Show. I don't believe you won't return to your cave." Moments later, the middle-aged female cultivator received a sect transmission. "The soul aura of Foundation Establishment Elder Sure Show has dissipated within the sect. Sure Show is dead. How is that possible? He left less than 2/4 of an hour ago. Who could kill a Foundation Establishment Elder of the Corpse Demon sect near Corpse Demon Mountain without attracting the attention of Golden Core cultivators within the sect?" A sudden thought flashed through the female cultivator's mind, and her eyes widened momentarily. Could it be that the person who just received the techniques wasn't Sure Show but someone else in disguise? The more she considered this possibility, the more anxious she became. Everything about the situation seemed suspicious, and she did not want to get involved. She took out a jade slip that recorded the daily accounts of the techniques copied in the transmission hall. She altered the records of Sure Show's technique copies on the jade slip, changing it to her own name. After all, the accounts, spirit stones, and sect contributions would all match up. Even if the sect audited, nothing unusual would be found. Perhaps they would only wonder why a later stage Foundation Establishment cultivator was practicing these 4 relatively basic techniques. Songwon wandered through the market, making several rounds. During this period, Songwon had changed his aura no less than 10 times and had quietly devoured the spiritual mark left on the jade slips and Sure Show's soul. After confirming that no one was following him, Songwon finally returned to his cave abode with peace of mind, except for the sword flight technique. He placed the other 3 jade slips into the stone alcove in the corpse fiend well. As for the sword flight technique, he chose to practice it immediately. Being cautious, he did not use Sure Show's high-grade flying sword. Instead, he had just bought a low-grade spiritual flying sword from a talisman shop in the market as a Foundation Establishment loose cultivator, spending 4,000 spirit stones on it. This flying sword wasn't the best, it was a standard item produced by the Corpse Demon Sect's Talisman Refining Hall, but it was still a spiritual item and its flying speed was far superior to Sure Show's top-grade flying sword. For a life-preserving item like this, Songwon was never stingy. In the days that followed, Songwon continued his routine of dissecting corpses and practicing while also stealing blood essence from the corpse dissection cave. After reaching the Foundation Establishment stage, the amount of blood essence his body could hold increased more than tenfold. Songwon estimated that when his blood essence was full, it could even rival that of some Golden Core cultivators. Each time his blood essence was full, he could condense more than 20 bottles of blood essence. With each bottle priced at 140 spirit stones, he could steal over 3,000 spirit stones from the corpse dissection cave each time after killing Sure Show and obtaining a large sum of spirit stones, plus what he got from the Withered Blood's secret realm. And after spending for Foundation Establishment and purchasing techniques, he still had 43,000 spirit stones left. The resources consumed for his daily cultivation had not reduced his spirit stones but rather increased them. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, he occasionally sold blood essence in the market and bought cultivation resources. Sometimes he ran into Chen Yi and chatted a few words. Since Songwon succeeded in establishing his foundation, he noticed that Chen Yi's mood had remained low and melancholic. However, Chen Yi never mentioned the specific reasons. During this period, Songwon had also seen Chen Feihe several times. Initially, Songwon approached Chen Feihe to obtain an elder token, but now that he had already entered the Foundation establishment transmission hall. He no longer needed it from Chin Feihe. Even though he no longer needed anything from Chin Feihe, Songwen did not sever ties with him. Having a connection with someone who had a golden core ancestor behind him was always beneficial. To Songwen's surprise, despite Chin Feihe's problematic inclinations, he was still a decent person. After several interactions, Songwen realized that Chin Feihe was not the kind of sinister or scheming person he had expected, which made him another friend he could talk to in the corpse demon sect. However, each time they met, Songwen had to pretend to be a euphemism for someone with homosexual inclinations, which made him uncomfortable. One day, Songwen suddenly received a message from Chin Feihe. The message contained only a few words but instantly made Songwen's heart race. There may be a major change soon. Stay away from the corpse demon sect. Songwen looked at the message, his expression shifting. What kind of crisis required him to stay away from the corpse demon sect? Could the crisis be happening within the sect? Elder Chin, could there be a major event happening in the corpse demon sect? Songwen, puzzled, inquired through the message. I can't say exactly what's happening. As a loose cultivator, you still have the chance to leave the corpse demon sect. Leave as soon as possible. Looking at Chin Feihe's reply, a hint of unease flashed in Songwen's eyes. Loose cultivators still have a chance to leave. Does this mean that sect disciples have no chance to leave? Will they inevitably be caught up in the crisis? Estimating the time, Songwen figured that the Outer Affairs Hall should still be open. He hurriedly left his cave and headed toward the Outer Affairs Hall. End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC. Currently up to 202 as of 27 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon, Pa-Cinder-TL. If you are content with the free chapters, you can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as $1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon, and please leave some reviews. Need more reviews.